What's up, Roadrunner fans? Welcome to episode 295, the Alma Audible podcast, brought to you by the Dave Campbell's Texas Football Republic of Football Podcast Network. See, I was just telling Javi it's been a while since we've done that, and I totally butchered the Dave Campbell shout out. So, we're getting back into spring practice just like the football team is, working out the kinks, getting back in the groove of things. So, that's our topic for today. Welcome, Javi. Join me as co-host today. Adrian wasn't able to make it, so glad to have you stepping in, talk a little spring Roadrunner football.
Football is in the air once again. It's good to see.
Yep, for sure. It's it feels so different nowadays because the guys can work out year round. Like back in the day, it's like if you were to step foot on the football field with a coach within 100 feet, you'd like not be able to play in a bowl game because you'd get a violation or whatever. It's not like that anymore, and especially with the transfer portal. Guys like get recruited and then like 2 weeks later they're on campus. Everything feels very different, but still an important time for sure. And a lot of change in the air for the Roadrunners, I think, especially on the defensive side of the ball. So definitely a lot to catch up on. Some interesting random news topics as well. But before we start going through all this, we do want to give a shout out to some new subscribers on Patreon. I think a lot of these folks joined because Javi had a post-spring depth chart prediction that did some numbers, got pretty good traffic. So definitely go check that out. It's on our blog site behind the Patreon paywall. So shout out to our new subscribers since our last episode. That includes Lori Gutierrez, Jenny Slot, Jordan Fight, Brendan Pena, and Archie Chambers, who we will definitely talk about probably on this episode as well when we talk about the defensive side of the ball. We also had Jennifer Hayworth join at the insider tier with an annual sub. So we got some baseball representation, got some football representation. That's how you know it's spring for UTSA and Alma Audible.
Yeah, no, I think I did. I think I told you I did one for week one, I think, or right after fall camp, that depth chart piece, and I was like, man, and it's kind of refreshing now with the transfer portal, like you mentioned, that there's not going to be any movement in theory. Who knows what's going to happen? But so the guys that are here in spring, they are the guys that should be here in the summer and in fall camp too, right? So I don't think last year you would have been able to do that because there was still another a portal window that you had to kind of contend with. So it was kind of nice just kind of seeing all the new names. I think as I was going through it, I was like, holy moly, like this is like an entire new group of guys. And I think it just puts the emphasis on how important the spring season is going to be forever, as long as there's like a one window a calendar, right? I'm sure things will change and we'll have to redo it. Like it tends to happen every so often now with college football, but it is kind of nice knowing that after you get through the craziness of the signing day in December and then signing day in February and then the one transfer portal window, you for the most part know what the roster is going to look like in the summer and in the fall. Although I would say I probably, since there's not technically roster limits, I'm wondering if maybe there's any JUCOs that qualify or any grad transfers that UTSA might look at. So that's something that I might dig around for in the offseason, is seeing if there's any other open spots on the roster that maybe after spring they're like, you know what, we do need to add somebody else.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think what I like the most about it is like you don't have this awkward moment where the coaches are trying to hide guys in the spring and like not publish any highlights and not have a spring game and stuff like that because they're worried about them getting poached in the portal in that second round of the portal. That was terrible. That was terrible for the game, and we will have a spring game this year. Good to see that return. But yeah, I'm just really happy. Like there's a little bit more roster stability. It's still crazy for sure, but at least the craziness is kind of contained in that month of December. Well, that being said, I mean, what's your kind of first initial impression of spring football for UTSA, and what do you sense that the expectations are for the team?
I think what we've heard just in the first couple week and then a couple interviews that they've done is, I know the defense is going to go through a lot of changes through personnel, but it should be the same system that they've ran, right, with just slap. So there might be new names, but the system should be relatively the same. We kind of know what they like there. We know how critical that pass rushing position is and what they need to work on this spring. But really, I think that I don't know if refreshing is the right word, but it's nice seeing the offense, at least from what we've heard, be a little different, right? Under Rick Bowie and a couple of other new coaches, it seems like there is a breath of fresh air, I think, on that offense. I just, from listening to the interviews from the players and even Jeff Traylor, there's just subtle hints of big changes, right, that have taken place with the offense. You hear a lot of the terms, we're really fast, it's simple. Just little words like that, just key words that they've been throwing out there that kind of leads you to believe that maybe the offense is so simple. Simple's not bad, I guess, right?
Yeah.
It might come off as being bad, but sometimes when you don't have to think as much on offense and you're more instinctive and reactionary, it's better to be, know where you're going than kind of have to go through like a Rolodex of plays
Hmm.
and scenarios, right? So you think you've heard a lot of that, and that's led to some good vibes on offense. We know what this offense can do the last 2 years, right? We know it's struggled a little bit, but they would still able to put up points. I'm optimistic that with this new simplified, faster offense, that we're going to see maybe the full potential of Owen McCown, Will Henderson, the new tight end room, the new wide receivers, right? So it's definitely a sense of optimism. It's just a lot of unknowns, which I guess that's what spring and summer is for, just to kind of iron out the kinks.
Yeah, there's no doubt there's more confidence on the offensive side of the ball than the defense for sure. But I think overall, across the whole team, you definitely get the sense that guys expect to compete this year, right? Like you can tell that they know some of the other teams in the conference are kind of going to reset a little bit. There's been a lot of coaching change for some of the top programs, the top funded programs. There's been an increased investment in the rev share. Kind of funny anecdote from Coach Trailer that I guess David Amador received his first like increased rev share payment, and he called them. He's like, "Hey, you guys made a mistake on payroll. Like, I got too much money." Which like makes me wonder like how much do you have to get paid extra to like go call your manager, your boss, or your coach or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's got to be a pretty significant amount. I've seen some pretty flashy sports cars posted on Instagram stories and stuff. So cool to see. But jokes aside, I mean I think that message has gotten through to the team of like we're going to pay you guys at a higher level. You better produce at a higher level, right? And I think also just the coaching change of like not bringing some guys back, both on and off the field, right? We saw Coach Philo depart the program. We've got a new lead for sports performance. So I think Traylor definitely sent a clear message to the team, like, hey, these 6-win regular seasons and a bowl game against a bad team is not going to cut it anymore. Like we need more out of you guys. So encouraging, I think, to see the response so far. But I think we're really going to have to see as an offense adjusts to the new Bowie offense, and then defense. What do we have there? Huge question mark. We'll get into some more, but those are like my first takeaways from the initial interviews that we've seen. Let's see. I think we could start going depth chart discussion, but I think one thing that surprised me from speaking with people that have been to practice is how much the defensive line has already showed up. And I think some of that is just natural that like play defensive line is just it's more athleticism than learning a scheme or anything like that. Like you have your fundamentals, you've got your strength, you got your speed, and like if you have those three, you're going to be pretty solid. We know there's some injuries on the offensive line as well, so I'm sure that has something to do with it. But man, UTSA just keeps reloading at the defensive line position. It's truly impressive.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me as well as the on offense specifically, the tight end room is just kind of shocking to kind of go through it, and man, it just looks completely different, right?
Hmm.
Out goes Patrick Overmeyer, out goes Houston Thomas. It's kind of weird seeing their clips on
Dishman
social
too.
media, and Dishman. It's kind of weird seeing that there's clips on social media with Houston and A&M. It's like, man, like I mean, but like we said, it's the new world, right? So that's what's going to happen. But yeah, is Miles Campbell going to be the lead tight end now, or is going to be one of the younger guys like Ty Roop or Isaiah Butler Tanner? So it's with all the new changes, it is a little refreshing. I think if anything, I'm optimistic that Jeff Traylor continues to adapt. Right, I think sometimes he got criticized for sticking to his guns a little bit, but I think he's shown that he is now willing to kind of go out of his comfort zone with the staff, with his players. He when this first started with the transfer portal, he was all about hiding his players and not being able to play. But like you mentioned, uh, he just kind of doesn't care anymore. He's going to play his best players, and I hope the team performs. And if they leave, then they leave. But ultimately, it's how much he can maximize his roster year in and year out.
Yeah, I think as the years progress, we see Coach Traylor really morph and adapt to the new style of how college football is nowadays. He seems more comfortable operating it. He seems more accepting of like the new reality. And I thought a really good example of that was UTSA's Pro Day. It was very cool to see Trey Moore welcome back just to support the guys. Eddie Lee Marburger came and threw for the Scouts. Cam Peters returned and threw for the Scouts. So that was super cool. I mean, and Traylor said like I'm always those guys' coach, right? Like they went off and they did other things for various reasons, but at the end of the day, they have a coach and a supporter in me for the rest of their lives, which is really cool because I think it took a lot in his heart to get to that place, right? So cool. I mean, I don't know if that has happened in other programs where guys that transferred out came back for pro day and like competed at their pro day or not. But to me, like if I'm a recruit's parents, that says a lot about the character and the support they have for the student athlete.
Yeah, I mean, it was super refreshing seeing Trey Moore. You always felt like they'd never left on bad terms,
Yeah.
Trevor and Trey, right? So it's always great to see those guys back. Yeah, I mean, I just, especially at the age of social media, like you said, like just that being out there, it speaks volumes to the kind of program Trailer wants to run, right? It's more of a family, and you hear it when the guys, when especially with the new transfers come in, and I think Greg does a great job of asking them what brought you to UTSA, what stood
Mm-hmm.
out, what's that thing that really closed the deal for you. You want to think it's not money, and I'm sure that's a huge part of it. But they always tend to say it's the family atmosphere. They really care about you, and to see these guys come back, I think that kind of it's the proof of concept for them, right? Like, hey, no matter what happens, this is always going to be a place where I can come back and have a home. And I think Jeff is more understanding. Like, man, we just can't compete with when players get $500,000 to play for a year. We just can't do that. But he is more willing and accepting to for his guys to kind of seek that when their time is on UTSA. If it's at a year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever that looks like. So it's great to see. I think it's a sign of a good program. It's a sign of a healthy program. It's a sign of a healthy environment all around. So just it's overall just great to see.
I think another thing that's important to remember: some of these guys have degrees from UTSA. I mean, they supposed to be Roadrunners for life, even if they go
Yeah.
play a fifth year somewhere else. They're still part of our alumni family. So you can't write these guys off. And I know it could probably feel a little bit different when it's like a 1 year guy, but in most cases, like we went and took them from another school, so like why would you not expect them to do the same thing to us? It's like if you date someone that cheated on their last partner, like they're probably going to cheat on you again. It's just kind of the way that it goes, right? I guess like speaking of pro day, it was really interesting to see Jafar Murphy like go super viral for his pro day performance. I think he kicked a 70-yard field goal and like ran a 4.5 40 or something like that. That was strange for me for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it just I came out of nowhere, and you all of a sudden start seeing the national counts posted, and it just kind of snowballed. And I made the comment that I think he's done more for UTSA now than he did during his kicking career, which is just purely kickoffs, really.
Yeah.
So hey, any publicity is good publicity, especially for UTSA. So uh,
Yeah, I think like Adam Schefter or someone like posted
yeah,
a tweet
I
about
think the
him.
NFL account posted it too, like the NFL
The
account.
NFL, like at
Yes.
NFL.
And they like collaborated with UTSA football on it on
Oh
Instagram. So like,
wow, that's
yeah, I
awesome.
was like, holy crap,
Very
that's like
cool.
million. Like, I don't know how many followers they have, but I'm sure it's a substantial amount. So
Uh, yeah,
yeah,
I was laughing pretty hard because I was like reading the replies on one of those, and like some very astute observer was like, "Do y'all realize that this guy did not kick a single field goal for UTSA last
so like, no,
season?"
no, shh.
Oh
Brother,
man,
publicity.
I have
He
no
was,
doubt that his best football is still ahead of him. So like, I won't be totally shocked if he turns out to be a solid place kicker at like the UFL level or something like that. Is it the Toros in San Antonio? I can't keep
yeah,
track. They're folding these leagues every year.
yeah. It's the sign, whatever. I don't even know what league they're in, but they're the ones signing all the UTSA former players. So
I feel like every generation of San Antonian has like that arena or like semi-pro football league or whatever that they get burned by and
I
jaded.
still have the a Commanders coaster on my desk at work. I just
Dude,
keep that
I was
memory
such a
alive.
Commanders fan.
Dude,
And I feel
that
like
was
some
the
people got into the
funnest.
Brahmas. The Brahmas got
Yeah,
killed. Yeah, tough.
that was the funnest. I remember those first couple of games of the Commanders. Man, that was some electric football.
We talk about it all the time,
Yeah, rip,
Yeah.
real
I
shame.
still remember where I was for that first game. I was like on a romantic getaway with my wife. I'm like,
Keeping
oh,
like
hold on,
track of
I gotta watch the Brahmas
the
game.
game. Like, honey, I'll be right there. The Division two football games.
Yeah, and she's like, oh, why aren't UTSA games that lit? I'm like, I don't know what to tell you.
Good times.
Okay, well, getting back to UTSA spring ball a little bit, one of the biggest storylines coming into this spring was the. It kind of makes sense in retrospect, but the surprise transition of Owen Pee Wee from the money backer to the inside linebacker position. To me, it makes a lot of sense. Also explains some of the recruiting they did at the money backer position, where it seemed like they kind of loaded up there, which I thought was a little strange. I think Pee Wee's going to be fine at inside linebacker. He didn't really flash at money backer last season, in my opinion. For a 2-1-0 guy, he didn't make enough impact plays, I guess. So I'm really curious to see how he does at that inside linebacker position. Excited to see him, blitzing from the inside. I think he'll do well there. And like Coach Trailer pointed out in an interview, like Owen just doesn't really have the coverage skills to play at the next level as a money backer. But if he builds his frame, his stature up, he could have the body type to be an inside linebacker at the next level. So, what are your thoughts or reaction to that movement?
I think it's a classic case of getting your best players out in the field at the same time.
Yeah.
He mentioned, I think in his interview, he already gained 15 pounds, so that's great. That's where he needed to
Well,
be. I can see him being in the mold of like Shad Banks, where Banks, I think at his max was like 225, 230. I don't know if Owen can get to 230, but maybe he can be in the 20s and
yeah.
220s and still have speed. And Banks wasn't the biggest linebacker, but he sure was impactful and fast, right? So I think Owen can do that. Yeah, I think you said it best. It's he just wasn't impactful enough, right? I think that
Yeah.
position is created and made to create havoc,
Yep.
and he just did not create really. It's never good when one of your best players on defense you don't mention his name a lot.
Yep.
When you're either when you're watching or when you're like doing your film reviews and stuff, he just never stood out, and that's due maybe because of scheme or maybe because just he can deal with the coverage side of it like Jeff mentioned. So no, I think it's a great move. It's a case of getting your players out in the position, and it kind of opens the door for one of the newest Patreon members, right, to kind of fill that money backer role, and we'll talk about him here in a minute, but it does. The only question mark I do have is the depth of that position now,
Hmm.
because now you're kind of one injury away from dire situation there a little bit. So can you develop guys like Bryce Grays, and I believe Chris Bryson is somebody who's seen some playing time there, and a local kid, I believe. So can you develop that depth in the offseason to back somebody like Archie Chambers up, and then that because you would think, hey, well, you can just move Owen back to Moneybacker if something happens to Chambers, right? But I think at that point, Owen might be a little too big to move to that
True.
spot. So he might know the ins and outs of it, but I just don't know if he'll be effective there. Than maybe like a Bryce Grays or a Chris Bryson, who's going to be playing it like built for that position.
Hmm. Yeah, I feel I'm okay with this move. I think it's smart. I think it's going to work out. I would feel a lot better if Marcellus Wilkerson was healthy, and
Mhm.
I know that they plan to move him to safety when he's back. But I really liked what I saw out of him at that money backer position last year. And of course, he had that ACL injury. I think in the bowl game or last week of
Yep,
the season, something like that.
no, it was a bogey.
Yeah, I think it is confirmed he's out for the entire 2026 season, which is really unfortunate. So, hopefully he's able to get back to full strength and be ready to go for spring 27. But Javi, I know we were talking about this offline, but for me, I think the money backer, kind of like defensive line, it's a lot more like instinctive athleticism than having like great play recognition and like knowing the playbook and stuff like that. So if I had to choose between having a true freshman need to play some emergency snaps in a couple of games between the inside linebacker position and the money backer position, I'm going to pick the money backer position every
Yeah.
time. Like we've seen pretty consistently, young guys can step in and play quality snaps there, like right away. If
Mhm.
it comes down to, was it Brian Rudder was the freshman that they signed at money backer position?
I think it's Brendan Brown.
Brandon Brown. Yep, that's the one I was thinking of. If he has to step up and play 3 or 4 games, 10 snaps in those games, like that'd be fine. But if they had to put a true freshman out there at the inside backer position, where you're taking on double teams, you're taking on blocks and stuff like that, it's a lot more physical. To me, that's a bigger ask. So,
Yeah,
I'd rather have depth concerns at money backer than depth concerns at inside linebacker, which truthfully will probably have depth concerns in both. But having Owen there at the inside linebacker, I think gives a bit of a stabilizing presence, even though he will be new to the position.
because if I had to guess, the starting, and I did it on the depth chart, but I think Owen will take one of those spots just because of his experience and his time with the program, and I think Brandon Tucker is probably going to take the
Oh
the
yeah,
Kendrick Blackshire role.
to me that's a lock. I'll be
Yeah,
shocked if Brandon
correct.
Tucker's not starting.
And then behind them, I think you'll see James Wally, who kind of came on pretty
Mm-hmm.
strong at the end of last year, and then Darian White, who saw some playing time as well. And then there's I believe, I forget his name, but I know there's one of the transfer from Cal that they brought in at
Oh yes,
linebacker.
yes.
I'm sure he'll be vying for some playing time there as well. So and that's why spring and summer is going to be so critical, because you kind of know what you're going to get from Tucker and from Pee Wee, even though Pee Wee's new at the position. But it's really about developing the depth behind them, because you saw how Wally was able to step in and contribute at a high level, right? If even when Blackshire and Banks had to take some snaps
Mm-hmm.
off. So yeah, definitely build some depth behind those guys, um, and it's just gonna be hard. It's gonna be hard to replace Banks just because he was so impactful. And Blackshire was just solid. So I think Tucker can maybe be even a plus at that position,
Yeah.
right? Next year, he reminds me of a more impactful Marcus Curry. The OGs will remember that name. Just kind of always knew where the ball was, very impactful all the time. I think he's going to become a fan favorite just because of his play style. I think with the increased snap count, he's going to be one of the more noticeable names on defense, Brandon Tucker. So I think it'll be a great combo. They're not going to be the biggest combo linebackers, but I think they're going to be fast. They're going to be well disciplined, or they should be. We saw what that change in a linebackers coach did last year. I think this is the
Mm.
second year of him of Scott, right? So I think we should see some good production, if anything, at the linebacker spot.
Yeah, I'm quite high on James Wally. I think I had him as my like underappreciated player of the year last year. I mean, he really flashed in some plays last season. Young guy, so I think he can make some stuff happen. I wouldn't be surprised if he takes a big jump and he kind of becomes that like number three at linebacker. So we'll see. I mean, there's definitely some talent there. There's some athleticism. I think it'll shake out okay.
We didn't have this in our notes, but now that the defensive line coach thing situation got resolved, how do you think that I guess the alignment of coaches, right? I think we saw that Jeremiah Ashley got named defensive line coach, and I believe Corey Givens, I believe, is one of the. I think he's either will or outside linebackers coach, and I think they literally assigned three coaches to between defensive line and weak side linebacker, outside linebacker. Um, are you happy with that? Do you think that's going to work? Do you think the quality of coaches is good? Do you think that they upgraded there?
Oh man, I don't know. It's hard for me to say definitively. Yeah, it's an upgrade. I didn't think the defensive line was bad last year. I think the Will linebacker was like not well scouted, recruited, developed. I mean, there was
Honestly, I think all those things.
just a real lack of plus athletes there. That's definitely changed this year. That's not to say these guys are going to be great. We'll have to see. Um, so I don't know. I mean, I think that defensive line would have got a lot more appreciation if the Wills would have like been able to get 2 sacks a game or whatever.
Yeah, because I don't think you can say that the defensive line didn't perform. I think we know what to expect from those guys, and they did usually what a UTSA defensive line does. We know that they don't primarily get the pass rush from there. It's more
Yeah,
the weak side. Yeah, I mean,
there.
yeah, it's one of the things to watch for me this spring for sure.
Yeah, for sure. There were some times last season. It's been so rare to see this from any UTSA defensive line, so that's why it stood out to me. There were some plays last year where the UTSA defensive lineman was getting blown off the ball, and they were
Mm.
like 5 yards deep from the line of scrimmage. That pretty much never happens in program history. But it was always like third string guys, walk ons, whatever. Didn't think it was a big deal, but I wonder if that's something that upset Trailer.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why we see a lot of shakeup. Is just there. I think he let some things ride last year, or I guess the
Yeah,
last couple years, and
yeah.
it was time to just shake it up a little bit. Do you have more confidence in the wide receiver room being better, or the defensive line, weak side linebackers being better with new coaches?
Ooh, that's a really good question.
Because I think in the interviews this week, I think that Darius McGee, right, is his name.
Yeah, yeah.
He had some good reviews, right? So not to say that the wide receivers didn't perform well, but I think you definitely saw there was just some things that stood out every once in a while.
There are
Was that
inconsistencies.
yeah, was that due because of the complexity of the offense, and that's why there was so much miscommunication? Was that coaching? I don't know.
That's a good point. I mean, I kind of forgot how many plays we had last year where it's like the receiver and the
So,
quarterback didn't seem to have the same play call.
yep.
Yep, that did happen a lot last year, now that you pointed out. I think I'll go with the receivers having more improvement. I don't think that is all on like having a new receivers coach. I think a lot of that is going to be Owen being healthy and just a more friendly offense, right? Just easier to pick up. It sounds like they're going to be very intentional forcing some shots downfield, which will open more stuff up underneath. I had a blog post a couple, I guess, whenever Bowie was hired about the storm route concept that he does, or maybe that was a podcast. I don't know, but um, if you guys have been following for a while, you know about that kind of wrinkle in his offense where he gives like that kind of choice route to the best receiver to stretch the defense out and try to break that high zone coverage. So I think I'll go with receivers. It was interesting to see Jamel Hardy listed as like a vocal leader on the offense. I didn't have that one on my bingo card. I think that's a good sign. Even if he doesn't end up being the guy, I think it's still a sign of him maturing and developing. So I think I'll go with him.
Yeah, no, that's yeah. Ultimately, it just comes down to the weak side linebacker spot, right? I think the
Yeah,
defensive line will, especially, and you mentioned the how UTC has been able to reload there, but the names they brought in are imposing, are physical. They look great on paper when you read
right.
them, right? It's just about development and making sure that they produce at the end of the day.
Yeah, and honestly, Javi, I think will linebacker is probably the correct answer because they don't have to do a lot to be drastically improved from last year. There was almost
Yeah,
zero production there last year. It's like you got Nanya Nyanwu running around on one leg, and he's like the only player that produces anything at that
yeah.
position.
Yeah, it was dire, and we saw how bad things could get on defense if that position group doesn't produce. I guess my
Mm-hmm.
only concern is that there's only technically two guys listed because Cam Cooper's not participating. I guess in the fall
Mm.
week 3,
Yeah.
so I guess that's might be a slight concern. So if there's some injuries that will tend to happen, is there going to be enough behind them? But we'll see. I mean, it's
Man, if they need snaps at that position, I feel like James Wally could play that position.
he's a former defensive lineman. Like it would kind
Yep.
of make sense,
Yep.
and
He's
he
not
might
super
have
long,
started
but he's like
there.
6'3". He's really
Yeah.
strong.
And I think he might have started there, if I
Mm.
remember correctly. So yeah,
Yeah,
that
I'm
could
not
happen.
sure. Yep. Well, let's dive into the offense a little bit more. We know that Owen McCallum is technically out for the whole spring, but he's been out there a ton. He's not going to do full pad stuff, but he's throwing the ball. He's, in all the meetings. He's kind of doing like the veteran player coach thing. Is kind of the vibe that I've been getting. So, I mean, I think it's fine. I think like Owen needs to be healthy more than he needs to know every wrinkle of the playbook and build a ton of chemistry with receivers that are mostly returners from last year. So I don't have a huge amount of concern. The fact that he is on the field and he's around Coach Bowie, to me, you're going to get most of the benefits from that. Obviously, it's ideal if he's healthy and he's going through spring as normal, but we saw this with Frank Harris too. I mean, he would like take some springs off and it's fine, no real noticeable drop off. But I think it's good because UTSA has not developed a QB2 under Jeff Traylor. And Owen being out for the spring is probably going to force a real QB2 to develop. I hope. I'm not sure who it is, but I think there's a real spin to this that just gives a lot more snaps to the younger guys that need the development, whereas Owen doesn't necessarily need it. We know what he's capable of. He's capable of being one of the top players in this conference, or one of the top quarterbacks. I should say top players might be pushing a little bit, but I don't really have any concerns about it. Any reason fans should be concerned with Owen not participating?
No, would it be nice? I think it would. Obviously, right? You always want your quarterback out there, but he's a veteran. And like you said, he's going to be around enough. Around Bowie, where he's probably going to pick everything up that he needs to pick up. So it would be great. But he's a veteran at this point. I don't think you could be a UTSA quarterback if you didn't have to sit out a spring because of injury. So just par for the course for the
Yeah, for
Roadrunners.
sure. And I think it's probably pretty common for veteran quarterbacks to kind of sit out in the spring. I would guess. I don't follow it all that closely for the other programs out there. It's hard enough to be a sicko for your own program's spring ball, and to do it for other schools is asking a lot. But it has been interesting to hear some of the early feedback from the players around Rick Bowie. I think the one thing that we keep hearing a lot of is like he just has a lot more energy. I've talked to some fans that have had the chance to meet him at events and stuff, and they're like, he's just like very personable, very outgoing. He just kind of inspires, some enthusiasm, inspires some confidence and all that. A very different personality from Justin Burke, who is very reserved, didn't talk a lot, was a pretty kind of like passive guy. So if nothing else, Coach Bowie's bringing the juice for sure. What have you been hearing about him and his offense?
Yeah, I mean it's very similar. He's definitely it seems a lot more personable, a lot more boisterous with the players, with fans, with everybody. I think Mike likes to use the metaphor, analogy, whatever you want to call it, that you always date the opposite of your ex, and I think Rick is exactly that. We went from somebody who maybe liked to run a little bit more complicated offense to somebody who runs a little bit more simple. Again, simple, but it's not a
Mm-hmm.
bad simple. Maybe somebody from is a little bit more quiet to somebody who maybe is a little louder. So it's contrast, right? Obviously, Jeff saw that whatever he had going on wasn't working, and he decided kind of to go to the other direction. Um, I think it's good. I mean, there's nothing that we've seen, in these first couple months of his tenure that sounds off or looks off. I think if anything, it's really optimistic. I do wish they maybe let him talk to the media this spring, but that usually happens in the fall time for a little bit
Yeah,
before,
we
I
should get
believe,
like
right
one
before camp
interview with every
starts.
coordinator, and then if you tune into the radio broadcast early, they do like a chalk talk with the radio broadcast, and that can be kind of insightful. But it's hard to find if you're not listening live, like 2 hours before kickoff, you're gonna miss it.
Yeah. So, but no. Other than that, it's all great news right now. I think the
Yeah,
combination of a new offensive coordinator with the new wide receivers coach, it's I think it's what UTSA needed on offense, especially. So no, it's exciting. It's good for Jeff Taylor. It's good for the program. So I think it's going to lead to some good things in the fall time.
yeah. Longtime podcast listeners know that I have been a longtime fan of a simple offense executed crisp, cleanly, and quickly. If you're thinking about where you need to be lined up, how you need to run your route, who you're supposed to block, that's not execution. And that little slight hesitation or those second thoughts can really throw an offense off. And I think we saw a lot of that this past season. Like it didn't look like a well-oiled machine. So there's been a huge focus on we're keeping things simple. We're going back to some of the terminology that they used at Gilmer, which was interesting, and definitely helps out Brandon Tennyson, coming from Gilmer herself.
And Will
But
Henderson
what's that?
and Henderson, Will Henderson.
Yeah, yep, that's true. That's true. But to me, it was super interesting. There was like a leaked, I don't know if leaked is the right word, a UTSA 2025 play sheet was posted on Twitter. And look, I'm no football savant. I looked at that play sheet for like an hour. I could not figure out what those plays were. I mean, there's a million different words on there. Okay, are you familiar with like the whole like sight words versus phonetics thing when it
Yeah.
comes to like teaching kids how to read?
Mm-hmm.
That Justin Berg play sheet was sight words. We need phonetics. So I think it was Henderson actually in his interview. They're asking about it, and he was like, you don't feel like you need to be like studying this thing back and forth. Just figure
There's
out
been so many
is it
there's
left or
so
right.
many like little words, little just little things that even Trailer has said. I know they don't pick. I know they don't intentionally say it, but it's like when somebody asks you a question and that's just the truth, right? Like
Yeah.
that's how you kind of know they're being truthful about it. It's like, yeah, it's simple, it's easier to understand, it makes you react quicker, or whatever that. And that's like a perfect example. Like Will saying that is just like, oh man, I think maybe under Burke it was a little bit, there was maybe a little too much going on. And if you remember when Trailer was interviewed during the season, he's like, we're gonna go back to basics, right? Isn't that
Yeah.
like one of the
Sure.
things he said? So if you, after you look at that play sheet, which I don't know if I don't remember where it was at or if we can post it anywhere, but um, you look at that and then you remember those comments and you're like, oh man, like maybe it was a little too much for these guys to kind of take in all at once. And now it's the opposite, like where maybe it's like a simpler, quicker call, and you can audible quicker or whatever that might look like. But
Mhm.
I'm sure if you compare that play sheet to like a Rick Bowie as play sheet, it's gonna like be completely different.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because I think like the prevailing like review of Justin Burke as offensive coordinator was he's a really good game planner and he was really good at scripting drives. But once the bullets started flying and he had to adjust to what the defense was showing him and what was working, what wasn't, that's where he tended to struggle. And that makes sense. Like if you have a very complex offense, you go in and you've got the defense scouted and you know what's probably going to work, and the team is really prepared for those like opening 20 plays or whatever. But then when you have a huge playbook and you've got a really complex terminology and all of that, and you need people to be able to rapidly like think of like, okay, what is this 1 out of 50 play that we installed and practice this week, and ask them to execute it. It's a big ask, right? So I'm really excited to see how a more simple approach will pay off for these guys. But we could be sitting here in 6 months or whatever, and we're like, I know exactly what play they're going to run. We're running the same 5 plays all the time. This is, the defense knows what's coming, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll have to see how it pans out. But for me, I'd rather have a very simple offense that you can trust the guys to know how to run the plays and do well. Versus like, oh, we're going to run some crazy stuff they're not expecting and catch them off guard, because you're probably going to have 3 plays where that doesn't work out before you have that one that hits.
Yeah. Yeah, I know it's going to be interesting, but like we've been saying, I think it's all good, right? It's all good stuff. It's things that UTSA needed, so it's good to see.
Yep. Well, I think that kind of takes care of everything that we had in the notes here. Was there anything that we missed that maybe we should hit upon?
Yeah, just I guess the only thing really is that recruiting's kind of slow right now.
Yep. Very
It is
slow.
going to pick up a little bit once summer comes around with the camps and all that good stuff. There's been a big shakeup in the recruiting stuff as well, so things are going to be a little bit different. With the transfer portal window just being the one, like I said, there maybe it just kind of slipped into my mind that they might be willing to add maybe like a JUCO player or a transfer that's still out there if they feel like they need somebody. So keep an eye out for that. If you see some random announcement in the middle of the summer, that's probably why. But besides that, it's going to be summer camps in the summer, and UTSA usually tends to get a couple commitments here and there when those fall camps come around. I think for the high school guys, those camps are really important. I think if you notice, most of the high school kids that commit to UTSA have attended those camps. Just because they're able to see them, they're able to kind of like put eyes on them, and obviously, if a kid's interested in your program, he's going to come to one of your summer camps. So it's kind of interesting to always keep an eye on those lists, because most of the time, I want to say like 50 to 60 to maybe even 70% of the commits attended one of those summer camps.
Hmm.
So it's always good to keep an eye on those lists, because those names will keep coming around.
Awesome. Yeah, and I know, like, especially for the quarterbacks, sometimes they'll have a guy picked out, and they land them, and then when they get in there for camp, after the camp, that's when they start pushing the commitment, like that day sometimes. So yeah, keep an eye on that. Stay tuned to the Patreon chat for Alma Audible. You'll have the inside scoop. Speaking of Patreon, as we wrap things up here, I do want to give a shout out to our board of trustees and our big money donors. On the board of trustees, that includes Digiteek, John Alwell, Gary and Ruben represent the UTSA Burger King Tailgate, Ray Redding, Andy Elizade, Proficient Benefit Solutions, Ian McClendon of Secret LLC, Javon Townsend, president of the DFW chapter of the UTSA Alumni Association, Waterman Construction, UTSA Annual Giving, Brandon Patron, UTSA King Bowser, and Runners United, where you go to www.goutsa.co to support UTSA student athletes. And then on the big money donor level, shout out to Ben Tovar, the Bunch family, Zach Espartaqueta, and the San Antonio Podcast Network, Alejandro Benavides, Dan Nerdall, host Around the Bird Bath, who is stepping into our virtual studio as soon as we hit end so he can record the ECU preview podcast with Rylan. But we'll get out of here soon enough, Dan.
He's actually kicking us out as we speak.
Yeah, pretty much. Shout out to Jacob Cavazos, former board president for the UTSA Alumni Association. John Nally. I'm trying to get out of here fast for Dan, so I'm like rushing through these and slipping
he's
up.
Pressuring. He's very pushy.
Shout out to John Nally, Rick Cortez, the Road Grillers, Sumner McDaniel, Joe Rodriguez, UTSA grad 1998, Russell Rincon, Brandon Dunnigan, realtor with the Social House Group, and Homefield Apparel, where you can use UTSA What's Homefield to get 50% off your first order. If you've never bought from Homefield before, I feel like everyone has at this point. I guess you got to start cycling through the different email addresses to get the coupon. But last teaser on that is we have our mock-ups in the mail for our new baseball merch line. Super excited about. It's gonna be more of a vintage look. We're gonna call it the Sandlot Collection, so stay tuned for that. We'll have some photo shoots with the baseball player coming out soon, so excited to get some new merch out there for you guys, and keep an eye out for the new hotness to drop. But until then, thanks, Javi, for joining me, and we'll keep our ears to the ground with spring practice. Be sure to be on the Patreon chat. We've had Brandon going out to practices pretty often, so we've got some good intel in there. And yeah, we'll see you guys around for the next one, and be sure to check out Around the Bird Bath for all of your baseball content and updates as well.